Flashback.
All right, Deputy. I'm gonna clean up this one-horse town.
Soon after.
Budlight.
Bartender, where's mine? Now we had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as...
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It's gotta stop at some point, right? Unless there's a lack of gravity or an atmosphere, eventually the momentum is gonna run out. And so most people probably thought that was the case with this Budlight boycott, and being at week 6, people were in absolute shock. It's been 6 weeks of this boycott and still it continues to get worse. At some point it can continue to get worse. Well, that was week 6. We're now in week 10, and what if I told you that consistent downward trajectory for Bud Light that started to slowly taper off, we were seeing a loss in sales of around 1% per week towards the end? What if I told you that in week 10, the losses for Bud Light ballooned? Well, you might not believe it, but it's true. Things literally just got worse for Bud Light again. Who knows, maybe it's the Joe Rogan effect. Maybe it's the boomers who are just catching on. Maybe it's all the exposure to all these important issues that fall under the umbrella of protecting the kids. Whatever it is, it's happening. Let me show you the numbers. The Bud Light collapse continues and continues to get worse. It just won't stop. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, the most recent sales numbers are in. Let's refer to these two charts right over here. We have sales growth and then volume growth, Budweiser and Bud Light. From April 1st when this whole thing began, or at least when the first initial numbers came in, after the boycott was launched, we saw it continuously get worse the last month or so. Although throughout the month of May it was pretty consistent, negative 24% sales growth and negative 27-ish to 26% in volume growth. And then all of a sudden, I don't know exactly what happened, but week 10 just came in for the first week of June, and all of a sudden, Bud Light volume growth is down 30% or 29.9%, and sales growth went from negative 23.3% to negative 27%. All of a sudden, on a week-by-week basis, we're seeing anywhere from a 10 to 15% reduction in sales growth in just 7 days. Could you imagine being at Bud Light right now? They've shut up for the most part. They've totally backed off. There's no more attempts at damage control. They've taken a step back. They're doing more masculine ads, of course. I mean, it's the same strategy. They're hoping that slowly things are just gonna bounce back to normal, or hopefully the collapse is gonna stop, but the brand is in total free fall mode. And it's exactly what we've been reporting on. People are making totally new consumer habits. We don't have all the other beer brands or the major competitors, at least not on this chart, but just take a look at the bottom at Coors Light. All of a sudden, Coors Light is experiencing spectacular growth. I wonder where that's coming from. This could mark total demise for the Bud Light brand. This damage is most likely permanent. At least that seems to be the insider take. Some beer distributors believe that Bud Light boycott could be permanent, surveys say. A significant portion of beer distributors believe the ongoing consumer boycott against Bud Light could permanently damage the brand, 2 new surveys found. A survey by investment firm Jefferies Group found that 65% of beer distributors expect the Bud Light boycott to continue for 6 more months, and another 32% think that it could be permanent, according to Brewbound, a beer industry publication. A separate distributor survey by Goldman Sachs showed that most respondents do not believe Bud Light will make a, quote, full recovery in its brand equity and market share, Brewbound reported. Goldman's survey was taken with 57 distributors who serve over 200,000 retail outlets. The distributors who say that Bud Light will make a turnaround believe it will take 3 to 5 years to rebuild the brand. Almost 2/3 of beer distributors said Anheuser-Busch sales volume was down on Memorial Day, and 62% said inventories are significantly higher in Goldman's survey. So the public has a pretty pessimistic look, but the actual insiders themselves, the distributors, think it's even worse. You know, the actual experts who understand the way the business works. Their perception is that Bud Light won't be able to fix this, or at least get back to normal, won't be able to reestablish their brand image for the next 3 to 5 years. That seems kind of reasonable. I think that's pretty much what it's going to take, and even then, I feel like they're going to need a new generation to grow up unaware of the issue to make those gains back and undo the losses. I tend to look at this from my perspective, and everywhere I go, I was just at a little restaurant, like a little lunch spot, and on the tap, they had Budweiser, they had Bud Light, and Stella Artois. I never drink beer during lunch, it's just way too too heavy, but usually looking at the taps or looking at the cold can of beer in the fridge, I at least get a little enticed, oh, that looks like a nice cold beer. In this case, I looked at the beer and I was revolted. I know all of it fell under the Anheuser-Busch brand, and I didn't want anything to do with it. The idea of purchasing a cold glass of beer in that instance was a never gonna happen situation. There wasn't even an inkling. That's hard to undo because that's now baked deep in my subconscious. I don't want anything to do with those brands. They've been completely dropped. And it's funny how these new consumer habits kind of happen. Again, from my personal experience, back in mid-April or so when this Bud Light thing really started to kick off, I spent about a month or so in South Florida with my whole family, at least my inner nuclear family. We just happened to have a couple bottles of Stella in our beer fridge. My dad offers me a beer and I said, nah, I'm not gonna drink that, I'll take the other one. I forget which one it was. We had a whole conversation about the whole ordeal, and then I remember the next day my dad went to Publix, and guess what he came back with? He came back with a Let's Go USA Yuengling beer box. This one, as you guys can see right over here, it's never really a brand that I gave an honest shot to, although especially in Florida I feel like you see the brand everywhere, but instantly new habits were made. That's now the beer of that household, and it's probably not going to change. I mean, maybe a little bit, but definitely not going back to Anheuser-Busch. Period. That exact situation, that little anecdote, is a microcosm of the larger effect. That's what's happening. And the craziest part is that more and more people are joining in and doing that exact same thing. And as we mentioned in the previous video, moving forward, well, more and more retail shelf space is going to represent that breakdown. You're going to start seeing less Bud Light and less Budweiser, which is crazy to think of because in all the major retailers, the moment you get to the beer section, you just see these massive sort of boxes or stacks of boxes of Bud Light and Budweiser. It's kind of just the typical image of the beer section. Well, moving forward, next year that's likely to change. And that is where the permanent damage aspect comes in. Market share and market dominance. With a 30% loss in sales volume, Modelo, the second most popular beer in America, is just there. I mean, it's so close. In fact, it might have already taken over. It might have already leapfrogged Bud Light. We don't have the official numbers yet, as the most popular beer in America. Billions lost, irreparable damage, new consumer habits. I've never seen anything like it. It's beyond anything that I could have imagined. Honestly, not in my wildest dreams did I think that the Bud Light boycott would reach the levels that it has reached and would be as persistent as it is. It's basically what I've been saying since the start as I've been promoting it. Keep the pedal to the metal. Do not stop. I really thought that this thing would fizzle out after maybe a couple weeks, a month. It's been 10 weeks, 2 months and a half, almost 3 months at this point, since we're almost 2 weeks from June 3rd, which was the 10-month week, and it keeps getting worse for this woke brand. Get woke, go broke. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Of course, you know that we'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you on the next one.